going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best fire staff builds for PvP and PvE in New World. So for each and every single build I will explain what attributes and perks you want to have, then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. And yes, the fire staff got a bit of a nerf the last patch, but this is still a very strong and high DPS weapon, so I can't wait for you to see all the new builds. So if all this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then moving over to the first build, which for we are using the fire staff and rapier, and these are the attributes you want to have. And no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 150 and then get 100 points in constitution, and then around level 60 you should have 250 intelligence and 150 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you want to go with the medium category, and the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest piece, light pants, medium boots and medium gloves. And this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavyweight category. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the fire staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock right off from the start the first ability called the pillar of fire, and then get the next perk to him as well. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the fireball, and then get these two perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and get both these two perks. And now let's get the last third ability called the burnout, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now from this point you can spend your points in whatever way you like. So then let's go over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock right up from the start both these two abilities called the evade and repost, and then afterwards unlock both these two perks. Then lastly get the third ability called the fleech, and then get these 3 perks as well. And now let's take a closer look at the left side and get both these 2 perks, and now again you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all we have the fire staff, and the Q ability aka the burnout is a big dash spell which you can use for mobility, or if you hit enemies while dashing they will take extra burn damage. Then the R ability is called the pillar of fire, which in your targeted area it shoots the burst of flames dealing damage to all enemies standing in the circle. But as this ability takes about a second to cast, I recommend to right after channeling the spell do one medium jump, and this will speed up the casting process by a lot. And then lastly we have the F ability called the fireball, which is very powerful damage spell, and as it is an AoE spell you don't have to hit directly an enemy, you can just aim it at the ground where the target is standing on and it will damage him as well. So now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the rapier, and the first Q spell is called the evade, which by activating makes you invulnerable for a split second, and it can be good in dodging enemy attacks, but you have to know how to use it. So then we have the second ability called the repost, and it is a reflect, which means that when you activate it and if an enemy hits you, you will reflect the incoming damage from you to him. So if he does an F ability on you, instead of you getting hit he will hit himself. And lastly we have the fleech ability, which will deal damage and provide a small but nice mobility spell. Okay, so the best way to attack a player is always try to keep your distance, so always be away from the enemy at least 4 to 5 meters. So what you want to do is from the range use your auto attacks and activate the fireball, and then keep on using the medium dodge rolls for 15% increased damage. And then when the enemy gets close to you, you dash into him with the burnout ability, and then switch to the rapier and first of all use your repost ability and reflect the incoming damage. Then when that is done, use your fleech ability and create more distance from him, so while he tries to catch up to you, switch to the fire staff and try to finish him off. Or if that is not enough, go back to the rapier and use the evade and auto attacks, and that should do the job. For this specific build there are many playstyles, so for example you could never dash into the enemy but instead use the burnout ability and dash away, and then you do the same thing with the rapier fleech ability, and this would create a lot of distance to shoot the enemy from far away, so it's up to you. This fire staff and rapier build gives you a lot of playstyles to try out and play. You can go all in with the rapier rapier or try to keep your distance with the fire staff, and much more. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This fire staff and rapier weapon combination right now is super strong and has very high damage capability, and with the spells we have selected we make this build work very well in PvE, open world PvP, and even in 1v1s. So then lastly, for the fire staff you want to use the opal gem, then for the rapier get the aquamarine gem, and then for all of your gear use the onyx gems. And just to quickly explain the rapier gem choice, so what we did, we spent all of our attribute points in intelligence, and as the rapier weapon itself works only with dexterity, so by using this aquamarine gem we now make the rapier work with intelligence as well. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for a very fun and high damage build for solo or group PvP and PvE, then this is the one for you, so check it out and enjoy. So then, taking a closer look at the second build, which is the one and only Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, and these are the attributes you want to have. And no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 150 and then get 100 points in constitution, and around level 60 you should have 250 intelligence and 150 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you want to go again with the medium category, and the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest piece, light pants, medium boots, and medium gloves. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Fire Staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock right off from the start the first ability called the Pillar of Fire, and then the next perk to him as well. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Fireball, and then get these two perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and get both these two perks. And now let's get the last third ability called the Burnout, and then get these three perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can spend your points in whatever way you like. Okay, and now let's take a closer look at the other weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock all these three perks, and then the first ability called the Ice Storm, and then get these three perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and unlock this one perk, and then the second ability called the Ice Shower, and then unlock the next perk to him as well. And lastly unlock the last third ability with the next perk, and now from this point you're full free to spend your points in whatever order you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all we have the Fire Staff, and the Q ability aka Burnout is a big dash spell which you can use for mobility. Then the second ability is called the Pillar of Fire. I usually use it only on grouped up players and never in a 1v1 because it will deal decent damage, but you have to stand still for a second while casting the spell, and by doing that you become an easy target to the enemy shots. So basically only use the spell in group PvP or PvE. And then lastly we have the F ability called the Fireball, which is very powerful damage spell, and you can just aim it at the ground where the target is standing on and it will damage him as well. So now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and your Q ability is called the Ice Storm, which all enemies standing in it will get damaged and slowed, and the more enemies you hit the higher damage you will get. Then your R ability is called the Ice Shower, which when using will create an ice wall, and if players go through it will stun them, and this ability is very useful in trapping your targets. And then lastly our third ability is basically like an ice block, which by using you put yourself in a block where you cannot take any damage, and you can go out of that ice block by pressing the same F key, or instead press the right mouse button and make it explode while going out that ice block, dealing even more damage to the enemies. So as far as your ability combinations go for the Ice Gauntlet, when farming mobs or even players, the best spell combination to do is place the Ice Storm aka the Q ability, and then go Ice Block by pressing the F ability, and players or mobs standing in the storm will be taking a lot of damage every second, and you will be fully protected in the Ice Block. Then of course place the Ice Shower aka the R ability whenever you want to stun an enemy, or perhaps run away from him, and this will create a wall which the enemy cannot go through. And then as far as your Fire Staff abilities go, use your Fireball and Pillar of Fire on grouped up enemies, and to run away from players or run towards them use the Burnout ability. And especially in wars this spell is really good because when you use it and it dashes it will do damage to all players that you just dash through, so you can easily one-shot your enemies if they're just 30% health. And with all this said, now let's go over my final conclusions for this build. This Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet weapon combination was nerfed in the previous patch, and it doesn't do that much high damage as it used to, but it is still a very good build for mage class. And because of the perks we have selected, you don't have to run out of mana ever, and you don't have to waste any money on mana potions. You can just easily do only heavy attacks, which you do the same way like normal attacks, by just holding the attack button for a second longer. And I've been personally only playing with this build myself, so if you're looking for more level 60 PvP, wars or anything like that, then scroll through my channel and you will find a lot more content for this specific build. And then of course, last but not the least, for the Ice Gauntlet you won't use the Malachite gem. Then for your Fire Staff, get the Opal gem. And then for your gear, amulets, rings and everything else, use the Enix gems, and that's about it. So if you're looking for still one of the best and most DPS builds for mages, then this is the best weapon combination for you, so have fun. So then moving over to my last and final build, which is the Fire Staff and Void Gauntlet, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your intelligence to 200 and then get 50 points in constitution, and then continue putting everything else in intelligence. And around level 60 you should have 250 intelligence and 150 constitution. I've really tested multiple Fire Staff builds, and in this current stage of the game, for all these 3 builds, this is the best attribute setup. So then lastly, for your gear, you want to go again with the medium category, and the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest piece, light pants, medium gloves and medium boots, and this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavyweight category. And technically you could get about 3 to 5% extra damage and 2 dodge rolls if you choose to go with the light category, but as a mage player your abilities really don't have that much of a range, so in my opinion for PvP and PvE you really have to use the medium armor, but it's up to you. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Fire Staff, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock both these 2 perks and then get the first ability called Fireball, and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards let's take a closer look at the other side and unlock this 1 perk, and then the second ability called the Incinerate, and then get these 3 perks. And lastly unlock the last third ability called the Burnout, and then get these 3 perks. And now from this point you're for free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. And now let's go over to the second weapon, which is the Void Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the Void Blade, and then get these 3 perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Oblivion, and then get these 2 perks. And lastly get the last third ability called the Petrifying Scream, and then unlock these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can spend your points in whatever way you like. Okay, so now we have come to the gameplay, where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And as I've covered already the Fire Staff twice, the only different thing in this build is the R ability, which is called the Incinerate, and when you use it, it creates a fiery explosion around you, which will deal decent damage, inflict burn effect and cause enemies to get pushed back for 3 meters. So then let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Void Gauntlet, and the first Q spell is called the Void Blade. And after activating you basically get a Void Dagger, which you can use like any other melee weapon, and by using normal attacks not only you will do a lot of damage but as well reduce your enemy's damage absorption. Then the second ability is called the Oblivion, which creates a circle around you, and you and your teammates inside the circle will get 20% damage increase, but on the other hand your enemy standing in the circle will be taking damage over time. And lastly our third ability is called the Petrifying Scream, which when using will deal decent damage, stagger and root enemies in front of you for 2 seconds, and if you hold the left mouse button you can get your mana back, but it will remove your health. So for this specific build I definitely do not recommend to use this mechanic. If you have watched my previous videos, then you will know that I only would suggest to use this for healers. So the way you want to use this build in combat is first of all use your Void Gauntlet and place the Oblivion spell, and then right after switch to the Fire Staff and shoot the light or heavy attacks, and keep on spamming them till you're close enough to the enemy that you can shoot him with the Fireball. Then when you get attacked or find yourself surrounded by 1 or 2 enemies, then use the Incinerate ability, and I usually prefer to save the Burnout ability for escaping, but as it is a dash spell, that behind its dash deals burn damage, so you can use it to run away or run towards an enemy. And when your Fire Staff abilities are on cooldown or you are farming mobs in PvE, then switch again to the Void Gauntlet and use the Void Blade and Petrifying Scream to stun your enemies and do a bunch of damage, and that's about it. As you can see, there's no one best way to use your abilities. You might want to use the Incinerate ability and then right after go full melee with Void Blade. Or perhaps you want to stay in your team's backline and buff your damage with the Oblivion spell and then just use your Fire Staff and vice versa. As this build is very good for any activity in the game, I strongly encourage you to experiment and find the best playstyle that suits your gameplay, and that's about it. So with all this said, now let's go over my final conclusions for this build. This Fire Staff and Void Gauntlet weapon combination right now is very strong and is a very high damage build for mage classes, and you can use it for PvP and PvE as well. And then of course, last but not the least, for the Void Gauntlet and Fire Staff you want to use the Opal Gem, and then for your gear, amulets, rings and everything else use the Enix Gems. And of course, remember to use the medium jumps so your mana would not ever be at 100%, and this will activate the plus 15% damage gem on your weapons. So if you're looking for one of the best and highest damage builds for a mage, then these are the weapons for you, so don't forget to have fun. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Fire Staff builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.